Hey, how's it going? It's Keith Townsend, principal of the CTO Advisor, and we have another sponsored piece of content in a series of content with Dell talking about VxRail. I want to set the stage for you first. We've bought VxRail into the CTO Advisor environment, and we have specific problems. We'll get into that set of problems with Jeremy Merrill, who's part of the engineering staff over at Dell Technologies. And basically, we're going to put their claims to the test over the next few videos. Starting out with this introduction to VxRail from the executive perspective, I'm playing the role of the executive. And Jeremy is going to try and make the sell of why we should at least bring in VxRail as a POC to solve our problems. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Keith. Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
So that's probably going to be the nicest thing that I say to you for the rest of the interview. This is a little bit different than what we do typically. So, Jeremy, I'm going to lay out to you what our problems are. We're, for the most part, happy VMware vSphere customers. We're running vSphere 6.7 on some Dell 730 XDs. vSAN has been a rock solid platform for us in the CTO Advisor hybrid infrastructure, sponsored by Intel, by the way. However, we're finding what most enterprises find, which is technical debt associated with running vSAN without any automation or tools around that, around upgrades. So we've been kind of stuck on vSphere 6.7 because we don't want to spend the time doing the pre-work and engineering needed to move to 7.0, etc., and get all the goodness that's vSphere 7 with Kubernetes support, etc., etc. So why should we take a look at VxRail as a solution to these specific problems?
So it's a great question, Keith. I think when you look at it, VxRail being a co-engineered solution between Dell and VMware really allows us to bring the best of both worlds together into the solution, right? So being able to leverage the PowerEdge server platform along with VMware and vSAN as the hypervisor and the software-defined storage layer allows us to bring those together. And then what we do with VxRail is we wrap around the automation to help facilitate some of the challenges that you alluded to, right? One of those being upgrading from 6.7 to 7.0, or even just standard upgrades within 6.7, update 1 to update 2 to update 3, so on and so forth. And that's really when we look at what VxRail is bringing to market is the ability to do that full stack lifecycle management of the hardware and the software all at once.
So I'm going to challenge you right off the bat with that because my team has told me, Keith, if you would have gone with vSAN ready nodes, we wouldn't be having some of the problems that we had. We went with 730 XDs, which weren't on the hardware compatibility list for vSAN initially. We had to add the right controller. We had to add the right set of drives. Like I literally went through this problem buying the wrong spec at the beginning, but we eventually got it into compliance. Why not just go with vSAN ready nodes?
So it's a great question. When we look at vSAN ready nodes, they kind of give you that off-the-shelf experience of really avoiding the situation you found yourself in, where you had some components that weren't on the HCL, so you had to do certain upgrades and things along those lines. With VxRail, everything's already on the HCL. Now, on top of that, what else we're also able to bring as part of that upgrade is that hardware lifecycle management piece. So with vSAN ready nodes, it's fairly simple and easy to update ESXi. But when we start looking at BIOS and network firmware and network card drivers and those sorts of things, that tends to be where the challenges start to mount up against an administrator. And so with VxRail, we put out a composite package, as we refer to it, and that composite package will do a full stack upgrade of not just ESXi and vSAN, but it's also going to be upgrading the BIOS, the iDRAC updates, firmware and driver updates to what we refer to as a continuously validated state. So you already know that we've tested those various combinations of the hardware and software updates for you as an end user, so you don't necessarily have to go track all that information down.
So I can attest that we've had this challenge. We literally updated the BIOS on our 730 XDs a few months ago, and we had to one, we have to find them. Then we need to make sure we're doing the right BIOSes, find the BIOSes for the drives, the servers themselves, and different add-on components such as NIC cards, etc., to just make sure that we're across the board compliant. However, what you're telling me is very similar to the story that I'm hearing from Dell's competitors. What I'm hearing from their competitors that as VMware opens up the ecosystem around VMware Cloud Foundation, that I'll have similar capabilities with those systems. What am I missing from a unique Dell technology storyline?
Yeah, so one of the key things there is that when we look at VxRail and even when we bring Cloud Foundations on top of VxRail, is that both of those solutions are still co-engineered between Dell EMC and VMware. Where when you look at some of the integrations with other vendors out there, it's more of a framework that those vendors can tie into. So it's not quite going to have the same end-to-end ability that we have with regards to upgrades and lifecycle management as compared to some of those other third-party vendors that are out there.
So we'll put those claims to test in later videos. I think that that's pretty easy to validate. How tight is that? You guys are giving us a full access to some VxRail systems inside of your EBCs, which was actually a pretty cool process. We'll go into that in a later video. However, again, more pushback on this experience beyond lifecycle management. When I hear the term lifecycle management, I think about the unique problems that I'm in. But one of the other challenges that we have experienced, we've breathed deeply of VMware Cloud Foundation in the form of its cousin, VMC on AWS. We did a review of VMC on AWS. We really liked it as part of our overall architecture for bringing in more capacity. That experience, that cloud-like experience, is something that we really desire inside of our data center. How does VxRail help get us closer to that experience inside of our data center?
So with that one, I think the key thing here is what you had mentioned previously is around Cloud Foundations, right? So what we've done is we've taken that co-engineering effort between Dell EMC and VMware with VxRail and extended it into Cloud Foundations. So when you actually go out and purchase and deploy a Cloud Foundations solution, there's a specific option to say, I am deploying this on top of a VxRail. That now makes SDDC Manager, which is one of the main components in Cloud Foundation, it makes SDDC Manager aware of VxRail Manager. So now you're able to continue with that full hardware software lifecycle management that you would experience in a standalone or a standard VxRail cluster and extend that out into Cloud Foundations. So now SDDC Manager, when it's going out to upgrade your on-premises private cloud with NSX and the vRealize suite and vCenter, when it comes time to do the ESXi components, it's actually making an API call to VxRail Manager. So now you've got that one main interface of SDDC Manager to update your entire on-premises cloud itself.
So tell me a little bit more about this secret sauce that you guys have with the VMware team. One of the things that I really found interesting when talking to the VMware team about VMC on AWS was the co-engineering that they did with AWS for EC2 drivers for storage. When storage is presented, they're not presenting the NVMe drivers up to vCenter. They're presenting this generic overlay so that the AWS guys can plug in any other types of storage. What other API calls can I make, like specifically around your Dell EMC, what around storage or data protection? Are you guys offering me any additional value other than being able to provision vSAN?
So VxRail Manager is really one of the main components within a VxRail solution. It helps, as we've talked about, with lifecycle management. But when I look at lifecycle management myself, it's not just upgrades, right? So it's adding drives, it's replacing drives, it's adding nodes into the system. It's even helping from a support perspective. And so VxRail Manager is a plugin into vCenter itself, and that's how you can do a lot of the administration of the VxRail side of things. Now, one of the main things that we've been focusing on around VxRail over the last couple of years is building out those public APIs. so that those customers that may not want to leverage the plugin directly into vCenter and they'd much rather make it those calls through API calls, they have that flexibility. That also allows us to open this up, those APIs up, to other use cases. One of those obviously being Cloud Foundations and SDDC Manager being able to communicate with VxRail Manager. So that way we do bring that flexibility into those customer environments that desire that.
So Jeremy, you know we're going to put all your claims to the test. We have a very extensive set of test plans or test scripts that we're going to run against the VxRail system that you're going to give us. We're going to test deploying the initial system all the way through this lifecycle management and API access to the APIs directly from vCenter and directly, frankly, to VxRail Manager. I'm sure you folks will do well on the test. If not, you know what? I now have your number, and you might be getting a support call from me.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it. I think you'll be very impressed with what you see.
Well, Jeremy, I appreciate you standing in the hot zone. I'm sitting, you're standing, so I can't say you're sitting in the hot seat. You're standing in the hot zone. These have been some pretty tough questions. I didn't prep you for any of these questions. And just like you're giving us the system without any guardrails, you're just saying, have at it, my engineers. If there's something to be found, they'll find it. If there's value that you weren't able to state, we'll find and state that value at the end of this series and as part of the report. You want to learn more about this effort with Dell Technologies? You can follow us on the web, thectoadvisor.com/Dell Tech, and you'll see this whole storyline being played out over the next few weeks. Or you can reach out to me directly. DMs are open on Twitter @CTO Advisor. Talk to you next CTO Dose.